The headlights carved two weak tunnels through the desert darkness, and I was thinking about my daughter when I saw him. Not the daughter I have now, the careful, distant 23-year-old who calls once a month and ends conversations after exactly 7 minutes. I was thinking about the daughter I used to have, the one who would wake me at 3 a.m. to show me how the moonlight made shadows on her bedroom wall, the one who believed I could fix anything, the one I lost somewhere between her 8th birthday and her 9th. The hitchhiker stood at the edge of Highway 50, thumb out, illuminated for just a moment by my high beams. He wore a gray jacket that looked expensive once, maybe 30 years ago. His face was ordinary in that dangerous way, the kind of face you forget the moment you look away. I should have kept driving. God, I should have kept driving. But it was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October, and I hadn't seen another car in 40 minutes. The loneliness was a physical weight in my chest, pressing down like someone's hands. My phone had lost signal around mile marker 89. The radio played only static. And there's something about the desert at night that makes you remember you're going to die someday. That makes you feel like you're already a ghost. So I stopped. The passenger door opened with a sound like tearing paper. He slid into the seat beside me, bringing with him the smell of old pennies and something floral I couldn't place, like flowers left too long in a funeral home. "Appreciate it," he said. His voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Not many people stop anymore." "Where you headed?" I asked, pulling back onto the empty highway. "Same place as you, I think." He buckled his seatbelt with slow, deliberate movements. "Home, or what's left of it." I nodded, keeping my eyes on the broken white lines disappearing under the hood. Small talk. Safe. Normal. Visiting family? Something like that. He was quiet for a moment, and I could feel him looking at me. Not at my face, at something else. Something deeper. "You ever think about that summer? The one where everything changed?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What summer?" 1997. You were 9 years old. Your mom was working doubles at the hospital, and your dad... He paused, and in that pause, I felt my stomach drop away like the highway had suddenly ended. Your dad was spending a lot of time in the garage. You remember what he was building in there, don't you, Thomas? I hadn't told him my name. The car drifted slightly toward the shoulder, and I overcorrected, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. "How do you—" "The workbench against the far wall," he continued, his voice steady and gentle, like a therapist leading a session. "The one with all the tools hanging above it, and that wooden box on the second shelf. The one you weren't supposed to open." The desert outside had become absolute darkness, as if the world had ended at the edge of my headlights. I couldn't see stars anymore. Couldn't see the mountains that had been visible just minutes ago. There was only the road, the car, and this stranger who knew the geography of my worst memory. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my voice cracked on the last word. "You opened it anyway," he said. "Kids always do. And inside you found the photographs. Not of your mother. Not of any woman your father should have had photographs of." Stop talking. "And you were just a kid, so you didn't understand what you were seeing at first. But you felt it, didn't you? That sick weight in your stomach. That feeling like the floor of the garage was tilting, like you were falling even though you were standing still." "Stop the car," I whispered. "You never told anyone," he continued, relentless. "Not your mother. Not the school counselor who asked why your grades were slipping. Not the therapist your parents sent you to when you stopped eating. You just carried it, buried it so deep you almost convinced yourself it never happened. Stop the fucking car." But my foot wouldn't move to the brake. My hands wouldn't turn the wheel. I was locked in place, hurtling forward at 70 miles per hour into a darkness that seemed to be growing, spreading, swallowing everything. And then Sarah came along. He said softly, "Your beautiful daughter." And you thought, if you could just be the perfect father, if you could just love her enough, protect her enough, you could prove you weren't like him, that his poison hadn't gotten into you. Tears were running down my face now, hot and shameful. "Please." But the harder you tried, the more she pulled away. Because kids can sense it, can't they? That desperation, that fear, She didn't understand what she was feeling, but she felt your shame radiating off you like heat. She felt you watching her, terrified, looking for signs of damage you might have caused just by being his son. I never touched her. I would never. I know, he said, and his voice was almost kind. That's what makes it so tragic. You spent 23 years trying to protect her from a monster, and she never knew the monster was your father. She only knew you were afraid of yourself. And children of afraid parents learn to be afraid too. Afraid of closeness. Afraid of love. The road ahead was starting to blur, either from tears or from something else. Some distortion in the air itself. The white line seemed to be bending, curving upward like the highway was becoming a wall I was driving straight into. But here's what you never knew, Thomas, he said, leaning closer. I could feel his breath on my neck, cold and dry. Here's what you spent 30 years not knowing, while it rotted inside you like a tumor. Don't. I begged. Please don't. Your father knew you found the photographs. He watched you put them back, watched you close that box with shaking hands. And do you know what he did? The world outside the windows had disappeared entirely. There was only blackness now, pressing against the glass like deep water. He burned them, the hitchhiker whispered. All of them. That same night, he built a fire in the backyard and burned every single photograph. Burned the box. Burned the negatives. And then he drove to a police station 3 counties away and turned himself in. No, that's not. He confessed to everything. Did 8 years in federal prison. Got out in 2005. Worked in a factory until he died of lung cancer in 2011. He never came to your wedding. Never met Sarah. Not because he didn't want to, because he thought you were better off believing he didn't care than knowing what he'd been. My vision was swimming. The steering wheel felt like it was melting under my hands. He died thinking he protected you, that you'd escaped untouched. He never knew that finding those photographs destroyed you anyway, that you'd spend the rest of your life afraid of yourself, afraid of your own daughter, carrying his shame like it was yours. Why are you telling me this? I sobbed. Why are you doing this? Because you're driving to her house right now, he said. Aren't you? To Sarah's apartment in Reno. 3 years since you've seen her. 5 years since you've really talked. And you're going to knock on her door at 2 a.m. and try to explain something you don't understand yourself. Try to bridge a gap you created while trying to protect her from a danger that never existed. He was right. Oh, God, he was right. My overnight bag was in the trunk. I'd left my house in Santa Fe 9 hours ago with no plan, except a desperate need to fix something that had been broken for too long. And when she opens that door and sees you standing there crying, sees that same desperate fear in your eyes she's been running from her whole life, it's going to be the final nail. She's going to close that door, and this time it will stay closed. You'll lose her forever, not because of what your father did, but because you never learned the truth. Because you let a secret that wasn't even yours destroy both of you. The hitchhiker reached up and adjusted the rear view mirror. In its reflection, I saw the back seat was empty, had always been empty. So here's your choice, Thomas, he said, his voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. Keep driving. Arrive at her door carrying all this poison, all this fear. Watch her close herself off forever. Or... He gestured toward the windshield, and I saw it. A rest stop emerging from the darkness, its fluorescent lights like a UFO landed in the desert. A phone booth stood in the parking lot, anachronistic and impossible. You stop, you call her, you tell her the truth about why you've been the way you've been. The whole truth, the photographs, your father, the 8 years he spent in prison that you never knew about, the shame you've carried that was never yours to carry. You let her see you, really see you, for the first time in her life. My foot found the brake. The car began to slow. But I have to warn you, he said, and now his voice was fading, becoming hollow. The truth won't fix everything. It won't give you back the years you lost. It won't make her suddenly love you the way you needed to be loved. Truth is just truth. Sometimes it heals. Sometimes it just opens new wounds. The car rolled to a stop in the rest area parking lot. I sat there, engine running, staring at that phone booth like it was a guillotine. So what do I do? I whispered, but when I turned to look at the passenger seat, it was empty. The smell of old pennies and funeral flowers was gone. The seatbelt was still buckled, holding nothing but air. I checked the back seat, my hand shaking. Empty. No one. Nothing. Had he ever been there at all? I don't remember walking to the phone booth. One moment I was sitting in the car. The next I was standing in that box of light, receiver in my hand, the dial tone humming like an insect trapped in my ear. The phone booth smelled like piss and cigarettes and the chemical sweetness of air freshener. Someone had scratched a message into the metal. Your MOM knows what you did. Below it, in different handwriting, tell her I'm sorry. My finger hesitated over the numbers. It was 12:33 a.m. Sarah would be asleep, or awake with insomnia, the way she'd been since she was a teenager. Another thing I'd done to her, another way my fear had infected her sleep. I started to dial, then stopped. Started again. My hand was shaking so badly I hit the wrong buttons twice. What if he was lying? What if this was all some elaborate game, some sick joke? What if my father hadn't turned himself in, hadn't died trying to protect me, hadn't? But even as I thought it, I knew. Deep in that place we keep truths we're not ready to face. I knew the hitchhiker was right, because it explained everything. Why my father had changed so suddenly that summer. Why he'd stopped coaching my little league team. Why my mother had looked at him differently, like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Why they divorced so quickly, so quietly. And why, at his funeral in 2011, my mother had held my hand and said, "He loved you more than anything. I need you to know that. Despite everything, he loved you. Despite everything." I thought she meant despite the divorce, despite his absence, but she meant despite his crimes, despite his sickness, despite the fact that loving me meant staying away. The receiver was slick with sweat in my hand. I dialed before I could stop myself. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello. Her voice was thick with sleep and suspicion. Dad. And just hearing her call me that, Dad, the word I'd spent 23 years feeling unworthy of, broke something open inside me. A sob escaped my throat, raw and ugly. Sarah, I managed. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I need to tell you something. I need to tell you why I've been. Where are you? Her voice was sharper now, more awake, more afraid. Are you drunk? No, I'm at a rest stop on Highway 50. I was driving to see you, but I can't come to your door like this. I can't show up and scare you again. I've scared you enough. Silence on the other end, long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then, you were coming here? At midnight? Without calling? I know how that sounds. How I've always. The words were choking me. There's something I need to tell you. About why I've been the way I've been. Your whole life. Why I've been so terrified, she offered quietly. Yes. Another long silence. I could hear her breathing. Could imagine her sitting up in bed, her face doing that thing it did when she was deciding whether to trust someone. A small twitch at the corner of her mouth, a flicker of something in her eyes. Then tell me, she said finally. So I did. I told her about the garage, the workbench, the wooden box on the second shelf. I told her what I found inside and how it felt like falling through ice into black water. I told her about the weight I'd carried, the shame I'd thought was genetic, a contagion passed from father to son. I told her about the years of therapy I'd never really engaged with, because how you talk about something you can't even name? How do you say, I'm afraid I might be a monster like my father? And then I told her what the hitchhiker had told me about my father turning himself in, the 8 years in prison, the factory job, the cancer, the death that had come while I was refusing to visit, refusing to speak to him, treating him like he was already dead because it felt safer than acknowledging he was still human. So all those times, Sarah said when I finally stopped, her voice small and distant, all those times you wouldn't let me sit in your lap, wouldn't help me get dressed, wouldn't come to father-daughter dances, or let me stay the night at your apartment after the divorce. I thought I was protecting you. I sobbed. From me. from something that might be in me. But I was just hurting you in a different way. You made me think you didn't want me, she whispered. You made me think there was something wrong with me. Something that made you unable to love me properly. No. God, no. Sarah, you were perfect. You are perfect. The problem was never. But there was no problem, she said, and now her voice was rising, cracking. That's what you're saying, right? There was no threat, no danger. You spent my entire childhood pushing me away from something that didn't exist. You let your father's crimes become my punishment. The truth of it hit like a fist. The phone booth suddenly felt like a coffin, airless and tight. I'm sorry, I said helplessly. Sarah, I'm so... Stop saying you're sorry. She was crying now too, and the sound of it was like glass breaking in my chest. Sorry doesn't give me back my childhood. Sorry doesn't undo 23 years of feeling like my own father couldn't stand to touch me. She was right. The hitchhiker had been right. Truth doesn't fix everything. Sometimes it just names the wound. I know, I said quietly. I know sorry is enough. I know I can't. Where did you say you are? Her voice had changed again, become controlled. Professional. The voice she used with difficult clients at her law firm. Highway 50. Rest stop near, I don't know, mile marker 120 maybe? That's 2 hours from here, she said. Turn around. Go home. Get some sleep. We can talk about this later. When you're not in the middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. Sarah, please. I need time, Dad, to process this, to figure out what... Her voice broke. I need time. Okay, I whispered. Okay, I love you. She didn't say it back. The line went dead. I stood in the phone booth for a long time after she hung up, the dial tone droning in my ear like a flat line. Through the scratched plexiglass, I could see my car sitting in the parking lot, looking small and vulnerable under the fluorescent lights. Beyond it, the desert was absolute darkness. I hung up the phone and pushed open the door, stepping back into the cool October night. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees while I was inside. My breath came out in visible clouds. The car door was open. I stopped walking, my heart beginning a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I closed it. I knew I closed it. But the passenger door stood wide open, interior light spilling out onto the pavement. Hello. My voice sounded small in all that emptiness. Nothing. No movement. No sound except the hum of the lights overhead and the distant howl of wind across the desert. I walked closer, moving slowly. Every horror movie I'd ever seen suddenly replaying in my mind. This is how people die. A voice whispered. This is how they find your body 3 days later. Still sitting in the driver's seat, your face frozen in an expression of terminal terror. I reached the car and looked inside. The hitchhiker sat in the passenger seat, seatbelt still buckled, hands folded in his lap, waiting. Jesus, I stumbled backward, nearly falling, my pulse exploding into a sprint. You did good, he said calmly. That was the right choice. The hard choice. How did you... I couldn't make my brain work. Couldn't make words form properly. You disappeared. I told you, he said. Same place as you. Home. Or what's left of it. He turned his head to look at me, and in the harsh overhead light, I saw his face clearly for the first time. It was my father's face. Not exactly. Not quite. Like a photocopy of a photocopy. Details blurring, features shifting. But the eyes were right. The small scar over the left eyebrow, where I'd hit him with a baseball bat by accident when I was 6. The crooked tooth that had never been fixed. No, I said, shaking my head. No, you're not. He's dead. He died in 2011. I saw the death certificate? He smiled sadly. The closed casket? Your mother telling you not to look? Thomas, when did you last actually see your father's face? My mind scrambled backward through years, through memories that suddenly felt thin and unreliable. The funeral had been closed casket. My mother had insisted. And before that, the last time I saw him was at their divorce hearing. I said slowly, I was 12. He looked at me once, started to say something, then just left. And you never saw him again, my father said, because I couldn't. Because looking at you meant remembering what you'd found, what I'd let you find, the innocence I'd stolen from you just by being your father. But you went to prison. You served your time. You could have. Could have what? Come back? Explained? Hey, son, remember those photographs? The ones that made you stop eating for 3 months? That gave you nightmares until you were 17? Well, I went to prison for them, so everything's okay now. He laughed. It was the saddest sound I'd ever heard. Some stains don't wash out, Thomas. Some breaks don't mend. I was crying again, hot tears cutting tracks down my cold face. So were you? A ghost? A hallucination? Does it matter? He unbuckled the seatbelt with a click that seemed too loud in the quiet night. I'm here to finish what I started. To give you what I could never give you when I was alive. Which is the truth that kills you. He stepped out of the car, standing across from me in the empty parking lot. The final piece you need to understand. My hand was shaking. My whole body was shaking. I don't want to know. Whatever it is, I don't. Those photographs, he said quietly. The ones you found. The ones that changed everything. Don't. I begged. They were of me, he said. The world tilted. I felt my knees go weak. What? They were photographs of me, he repeated. When I was a child, taken by my father, your grandfather. He took a step closer, and I could see tears now on his face too. I wasn't the monster, Thomas. I was the victim. And I kept them. God help me, I kept them because they were the only proof. The only evidence that it had happened. That I wasn't crazy. That my childhood had been stolen from me. But you went to prison for possession, he said, because the law doesn't care about context. Doesn't care that I was in those photographs. All they saw was a man with child pornography, and that was enough. 8 years, Thomas. 8 years in a prison where they put men like me, men like they thought I was, in protective custody because the other inmates would have killed me if they knew. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The fluorescent lights were starting to pulse and swim. So you see, my father said, his voice breaking, you've spent 30 years carrying my shame. But my shame was never about who I was. It was about who my father was. And now you pass that same fear to Sarah. 3 generations of men teaching their children that love is dangerous, that touch is poisonous, that the safest thing is distance. How do I fix it? I whispered. How do I? You already started, he said. You told her the truth, the whole truth. Now you have to do the hardest thing of all. What? You have to let her decide. Let her process it. Let her come to you if and when she's ready. You can't force healing, Thomas. You can't love someone so hard it fixes them. You can only be honest and then wait. He was starting to fade now, becoming translucent in the harsh light. I could see the desert through him, see the stars that had reappeared in the sky. Dad, I said, the word feeling strange and right in my mouth. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I never. I know, he said. I know. And I'm sorry too. For all of it. For the box I left where you could find it. For not being strong enough to destroy those photographs sooner. For dying before I could explain. Where are you going? Home, he said simply. The real one, where the pain finally stops. And then he was gone. I stood alone in the rest stop parking lot, the wind picking up around me, carrying the smell of sage and creosote. My car sat waiting, passenger door still open, interior light still on. I walked over slowly, almost afraid to look inside, but the seat was empty. No indentation where he'd sat, no smell of old pennies or funeral flowers. On the dashboard, there was something I hadn't noticed before, a photograph, old and faded. The colors gone sepia with time. It showed a young man, maybe 19 or 20, holding a baby. Both of them were smiling at the camera with identical crooked teeth. I picked it up with trembling hands. On the back, in handwriting I recognized, were 3 words. You were loved. I drove home through the remainder of the night, the photograph tucked in my shirt pocket over my heart. The road stretched ahead and behind, and I existed in that strange liminal space between. The hitchhiker, my father, whoever or whatever he had been, was gone. The truth had been delivered. The poison had been named. But the pain hadn't stopped. That's what no one tells you about revelation, about catharsis, about truth-telling and generational trauma and breaking cycles. They make it sound like liberation, like the moment you understand everything, you're suddenly free. But understanding doesn't erase. It just adds context to the hurt. I got home as the sun was rising, painting the mountains around Santa Fe in shades of pink and gold. My house looked the same as when I'd left. Small, neat, carefully maintained. A house where a man lived who was afraid of taking up too much space. I called in sick to work. Couldn't imagine sitting in that office, making small talk about weekend plans and quarterly projections while my entire understanding of my life was reorganizing itself like a Rubik's Cube being solved by invisible hands. I called my mother instead. Thomas. Her voice was thick with sleep and concern. It's 6 a.m. What's wrong? I need you to tell me about Dad, I said. The truth. All of it. Long silence. Then, what brought this on? Just, please, Mom. I need to hear it from you. She sighed, and I could picture her sitting up in bed, reaching for her reading glasses, even though she wouldn't need them, just wanting something to hold. What do you want to know? The photographs. The ones I found when I was 9. Her intake of breath was sharp. You never said you'd seen them. I was 9. I didn't know what to say. I just knew something was terribly wrong. Oh, baby. Her voice cracked. Oh, my sweet boy. You've been carrying that all this time? Who was in them, Mom? Your father. When he was... She paused. When he was 6, 7, 8. His father. Your grandfather. He was a monster. Thomas. A predator. And your father. He kept those photographs hidden away because he said they were proof. Evidence. But I think he kept them because some part of him needed to remember that it was real, that he hadn't invented his own trauma. He turned himself in, I said. Yes, the night you found them. He realized what would do to you, seeing them, not understanding. He called me at the hospital and told me everything. Told me he was going to the police, that he couldn't risk you growing up in a house with those things, thinking. Her voice broke. Thinking your father was like his father. Why didn't you tell me? He made me promise, she said. He thought if you knew he was in prison, you'd feel guilty. He wanted you to be angry at him instead, to hate him cleanly. He thought that was kinder than the truth. There's nothing kind about lies, Mom. No, she agreed quietly. No, there isn't. But we do them anyway, thinking we're protecting people. And all we do is create new wounds while pretending to heal old ones. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and looked at the photograph again. My father, young and smiling, holding baby me. Both of us caught in a moment before everything broke. Before his father's crimes became his shame, became my fear, became Sarah's loneliness. For generations of breaking, each one trying to protect the next and causing new damage instead. My phone rang 3 days later. I'd spent those days in a kind of suspended animation, going through the motions of living while waiting for something. A call, a sign, a resolution that would probably never come. I'd imagined Sarah's voice 1,000 times. Imagine the conversation we'd have, all the things I'd say to make it better. But when I answered, she didn't give me a chance to say anything. I'm pregnant, she said. Everything stopped. My heart, my breath, time itself. You're 12 weeks. I just told Marcus last week. We weren't planning to tell anyone else yet, but after our conversation, she paused. I need to know, Dad. I need to know if you're going to do with my child what you did with me. The question was a knife, sharp and necessary. No, I said. God, no. Sarah, I swear to you. Because I can't have my child growing up feeling the way I did. Feeling like their grandfather is afraid of them. Like there's something toxic in their blood. There isn't, I said firmly. There never was. The toxicity was in the secret, in the fear, and I'm done with both. Are you? Her voice was skeptical. Are you really? Because knowing the truth doesn't automatically fix everything. Dad, you can't just explain away 23 years with one midnight phone call. I know, I said. You're right. And I'm not asking you to forgive me or to pretend it didn't happen. I'm just asking. My voice broke. I'm just asking for a chance to be different. To be the grandfather I couldn't be as a father. Another long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, the sound of her walking somewhere. Marcus and I are coming to Santa Fe for Thanksgiving, she said finally. His family is in Arizona, and we're stopping by on the way. You'll have 4 hours. 4 hours to prove to me that you can be in the same room with a pregnant woman without radiating fear and shame. Can you do that? Yes, I said immediately. Yes, I can do that. And Dad, her voice softened slightly. I'm starting therapy next week. Real therapy, not just the crisis counseling I did in college. I need to unpack all of this with someone who isn't you or Mom, someone objective. That's good, I said. That's really good, Sarah. I think you should too. I will. I promise. She hung up without saying goodbye. But it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a door left open. Not wide, not welcoming, but open. That night, I drove back out to Highway 50. I'm not sure why. Maybe I was hoping to see the hitchhiker again. Maybe I was hoping to thank him. Maybe I just needed to know if he'd been real. The rest stop was empty, the same fluorescent lights buzzing against the darkness. The phone booth was still there, still scratched with confessions and apologies. I stepped inside and picked up the receiver, not sure who I was calling or what I would say. The dial tone hummed for a moment, then clicked off. A voice came through the line, distant, staticky, barely audible. See you when the truth finally kills you. But it wasn't a threat anymore. It was a promise. The truth had killed the lies I'd built my life around. Had killed the shame that wasn't mine to carry. Had killed the fear that had poisoned 3 generations. And in that killing, maybe something new could grow. I hung up the phone and drove home through the desert darkness. The stars bright and clear above me. In my pocket, the photograph of my father holding baby me felt warm against my chest. Behind me, the rest stop faded into the distance. The phone booth stood empty, waiting for the next person who needed to hear a truth that would kill them. Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear. Sarah showed up at 2 p.m. with Marcus, her belly just starting to show, her face carefully neutral. We shook hands. That's how far we'd fallen, from hugs to handshakes, and I led them inside to a house I'd spent 3 days cleaning. The 4 hours were awkward, painful, full of silences that stretched too long and conversations that didn't go deep enough. But I didn't run from them, didn't fill the quiet with desperate chatter or force intimacy that hadn't been earned. I told them about my father, the real story with all its complexity and pain. I showed them the photograph. And when Sarah started crying, really crying, the kind of crying that comes from a wound finally being cleaned, I asked if I could hold her hand. She let me. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't healing. It was just a moment of human contact between 2 people trying to find their way out of the darkness they'd been born into. As they were leaving, Sarah stopped at the door and turned back to me. The baby, she said. If it's a boy, we're thinking of naming him Thomas. I couldn't speak, could only nod. But Dad, she looked at me with eyes that were mine, that were her mother's, that were her grandfather's. You have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll tell him the truth when he's old enough to understand. Promise me you won't let him grow up thinking his family history is something to be ashamed of, that he needs to apologize for his existence. I promise, I said. No more secrets. No more shame. Just truth. She nodded, satisfied, and walked out to where Marcus was waiting in the car. I stood in the doorway and watched them drive away. Watched my daughter carry my grandchild into a future I wouldn't control or predict or sabotage with my fear. That night, alone in my house, I took out the photograph one more time. My father's young face smiled back at me, holding baby me with such obvious love it hurt to look at. I turned it over and read the inscription again. You were loved. And I finally believed it. The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just shows you where the prison bars were all along.